Well, hello there, fellow Hootats. I am live streaming from what somebody called earlier today the beautiful winter wonderland of the Bayou parishes, and I'm considering it a winter wonder hell. We're 12 hours in. I've had enough. Sounds like we got about 2 more days left to go. This stuff. So let's all distract me and talk a little bit about the Saints right now. One of the things I had mentioned in the previous video when I had to kind of switch this around for various reasons and go live today, which I had literally nothing better to do. So it kind of worked out for me that way. I hope it did for y'all. Um, it's real hard, I know, to talk about what the hell we're going to do at 9. And also using that to kind of keep in mind, we have picks in day two, threes. So without a coach, and we will talk about that at the end because they've had some stuff move around there. Um, it's hard to pin down exactly what's going to go on, but I still think the Saints need to look at this as a um, whatever's going to happen or they're going to try to make happen in 2025, they have to restock. We looked at that roster, that 61 man that's really right now 57, with some injury question marks. You don't know how they're going to play into it either in 2025 or in the future. We'll talk a little bit about all that stuff. But at 9, you have a chance to find um, that guy that maybe you can build something around somewhere. Even if you've convinced yourself, well, we just have to reset and tweak a few things and we'll be fine in 2025. I disagree. I think most people do. But even if that's what your plan is, just the state, the age, the money, and everything else that you've got on the roster, you're going to have to find a guy that's you'd love for him to be generational talent. I don't know if they really have any of those in this draft, but you at least want him to be potentially high floor, high ceiling, going to be with you when he gets a second contract. And unlike some of our other second contract guys, he's going to have a lot of production to back it up. So when you give him that deal, everybody goes, yeah, good move. We got to bring that guy back. He's part of this deal, this rebuild. He's part of what we're trying to do. So what I did is I went to Draft Buzz, which is a website. I am not convinced of their rankings, especially this is kind of based on their averaging analysis from ESPN, 24/7 Sports, and Rivals.com, which I'm not saying any of them are wrong, but this is kind of off their college production. That's basically what we're looking at, but we haven't started the NFL evaluation process yet. So bear that in mind. I don't really think even if these are rankings and their projections and ratings and all, necessarily agree or disagree, but they have a good collection of names in the top of their list that I think are relevant on some of the players we're going to talk about, especially with the number one. This is the defensive line. Interior, guy at the top, Mason Graham from Michigan. I like him. I like him a lot. If he survives the draft process, evaluation process, because what you have with Mason Graham, and it's a couple of different, not only the three that they reviewed here on Draft Buzz, but in poking around as we're starting to look at everybody's kind of mocks and who they've got in the top 10, he's a guy that appears a lot. And there's a lot to like about him. If he's a guy that would, and I don't think he's actually going to fall to 9, but you never know. He's big. He's an immovable force in the middle of that defensive line from Michigan, a very good football player. And here's the thing is they're claiming he can play 0 to 5 technique, which means 0 technique is lining up heads up on the center. 5 technique is lining up outside shoulder of the offensive tackle. And 1, 2, 3, 4 are in the gap, heads up, in the gap, heads up, in the spots in between. And they're saying he can do all 5, which basically means you would get a solid defensive lineman. And if this bears out that he can play all 5 techniques, it doesn't really matter what scheme you plan on running when our new defensive coordinator comes in. So he should be able to plug a hole in there. He offers. They like both his pass rush ability and his run stop ability, and a lot of these sites like his ability to get the other guys around him um, kind of free him up a little bit because he's so hard to deal with. Not unlike some of the better, if you've looked over the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of these teams with that defensive interior guy who does just that. I am not saying he's gonna be as good as these guys, but it would be nice if he was because if you can comp him to like a Jalen Carter or an Aaron Donald or Chris Jones or Vita Vea, whoever you want to plug in there on whatever level they're going to be, because I just ran through some guys that are anywhere from about ready to become Hall of Famers to potential All Pro types as they develop. I would take anything that falls in that category from this guy if he's available. And again, if the the pre-draft NFL process bears out what they're talking about. Two mega issues with them though, because they're always going to go through the strengths, they're always going to go through the weaknesses. And I kind of take the weaknesses sometimes with a grain of salt because sometimes it just seems so nitpicky. They're trying to find something wrong with the guy to cover themselves in case he doesn't work out. I get it, but talking about that, um, I read in several places one ding on him was he sometimes plays too high at the point of attack, and another one he's not real good at getting off blocks. And that is two things that I think has been used a lot of times to describe our current interior lineman. And I'm going, which brings us to the question we've missed so much on the defensive line in the first round in the last few years. It's hard for me to cast a vote for this guy, and I'm not saying 100%, but I'm saying he's a guy you got to look real hard at. You got to think real hard about, and when you're walking into that pre-draft process, when they're going to work him out, they're going to interview him and everything. It's got to be serious that if you can drill down and he's one of these guys, he falls to you at 9 that you can look at and go, he solves a lot of problems, and we don't even have to worry about a scheme fit. I'd probably say of all the guys that we're going to talk about in the top 10, I'm just looking at him going, we've got to rebuild that defensive line. We've got to put some young talent on it. A guy like him, especially if he's scheme proof, man, it goes a long way to solving a ton of your problems. Now, the thing is about using number 9 on him is this draft has a lot of good interior defensive linemen. Now, some are better rushers, pass rushers, than they are run stoppers, but most of them grade out and analysis seems to bear out. They all have pretty solid floors in the NFL with some ceilings, especially the guys that are better pass rushers. It's not one of those deals when you start talking about Nolan or Sanders or Grant or Harmon, um, Williams, who played won a national championship last night, the defensive tackle for Ohio State. They these guys and more than likely they're all going to be second day. So if you don't go or can't get him in number 9, second and thirds, you might be able to find one of these guys who can help solve some of the problems we were just talking about. Preferably the guys who are stronger in the run stop than they are in the pass rush, because really what we need in that interior. Preferably a couple of these guys are just hard to move out of the way by the offensive line, and they're going to occupy some defensive space, and they're not just immobile. And some of these guys they're saying are athletic enough that if it is a pass rush situation, even if they can't close and sack, they can still bring pressure up the middle. And we all know, we've seen when pressure starts coming up the middle in the current NFL, it wreaks havoc on what offenses are trying to do, whether it's the run game or the pass game. So I would say in the way too early, what are we going to do with 9 conversation? You got to take a hard look at Mason Graham. I'd say next thing you got to look at is edge. And this one is interesting also because the name that keeps popping up, and I was aware of this guy, I'd watched a little bit of Penn State during the season, but coming down the backstretch when it looked like they were a really good team and saw more of them, that Abdul Carter, their defensive end, who sometimes on the field when he's in space kind of looks like a linebacker a little bit. So you realize right away that he's very athletic, and that's pretty much the first thing that everybody says about him. first step, explosive, natural bend, which we've needed. That explosive guy off the edge that can get to the quarterback, along with closing speed, which implies not only can he get off like some of the defensive linemen we have been able to do, unlike them, should be able to close and actually turn a pressure into a sack, which we really, really need to get better in that category. And he was a pretty much, you know, the whole career in Penn State was a disruptive player coming off that edge, something we thought we'd get with like Chase Young, who we're not sure is coming back. And if we try to bring him back, it's probably going to cost a ton of money. Maybe you kind of get the same guy. And you got to look at his weaknesses again. And that you kind of get the feeling this part is right. If you watch him play, he's just kind of a raw pass rusher. He kind of out athletes a lot of guys, but he's relentless. So kind of gets away with it. They mentioned about that. And kind of along with some techniques, like he tends to play a little high, which again, that's a problem at times for our defensive line. So you get a little scared when you read something like that. And his tackling ability, which I didn't know, somebody mentioned they weren't impressed with it, but I'm going, yeah, that might just be the nitpicky part. Who knows? But this is another one that's also deep in the position. Now I think after him, you kind of, I don't want to say take a step back by any stretch of imagination. You're kind of looking at two categories: the explosive pass rushing type. That's what you're really looking at. The guys that can get to the quarterback, and they may not give you much else of anything else, and so they're going to fall down some. But I don't want to say athletic or as disruptive as him. But there's some guys who are really athletic and really disruptive in this draft. And then the other one is I'm gonna call it kind of like the balanced defensive end, a la kind of Cam Jordan, very solid. In Cam's heyday, he was good, setting the edge, playing the run, could kick inside a little bit. We saw that, even though he didn't like doing it, and be effective there. And had some good seasons with rushing the passer and getting him on the ground. So you kind of looking at in those 2-3 rounds on that second day. And some of these guys will, after the draft process, creep because they're edge rushers. And if they start checking enough boxes, they're going to creep up in the first. But Pierce, Umanu and I know I just butchered his name. I'm sorry, but he's defensive end from Ole Miss. Green, who's supposed to be a pass rushing freak out of Marshall. I never even heard of the guy, but he is like, I hadn't watched Marshall play a game in years, but he's up on the top of everybody's list as kind of one of those freakish pass rushers. Um, I'm not sure if it's skirting or scouting, but the defensive edge for Texas A&M who transferred from Purdue had a really good career in Purdue. I think statistically they've kind of taken a step back from him when he went to A&M, but ability wise, he still seems to have graded out. It's just the numbers may not have been there, but he's one that's been mentioned a lot of spots in the first round. I really hadn't seen anybody thinking outside the second, but a couple of times I've seen mock drafts where he's the guy the Saints take at 10. And I think supposed to bring a good pass rush, but I think he also gives in fact, I did see one comp. They said, yeah, he's in the vein of Cam Jordan. That's why I think that was PFF had him as in that mock as the Saints pick at 9. But you got some other balanced guys who, two of them from Ohio State played last night, Sawyer and Tumulo. Landon Jackson at Arkansas. I like the way he plays, and he's a bigger guy, and I think more of a run stopper and somebody who could also kick in the middle, but he does bring a pass rusher with him. And it's all stuff we need on that D line. So I really don't have an issue going there. Another possibility, and a couple of names who've been floating right around in that end of 10 into the teens is a couple of offensive tackles, Kelvin Banks from Texas and Will Campbell from LSU. This one's kind of funny when you start doing some analysis on them. They both kind of draw this, hey, they could be, ready to go year one, plug and play guys at left tackle in the NFL. They showed, especially, I believe they're considered more pass protectors than they are run blockers, but it's one of those things where I think as everybody's checking boxes on them, when they're going through their evaluation. That's one of the boxes they kind of put a question mark on. It could be better, but it's passable at what they do in the run. But they also get mentioned as guys that could step inside and play guard if necessary, if it doesn't work at a tackle. Kind of like Fuaga was talked about last year when we drafted him. So versatile, expected to be left tackles, but kind of sounding like they think these are two more of those players where more and more of these pros are looking for offensive linemen who are versatile. That either they win the job, or if they don't win the job and they have somebody better, they can plug him in and he can go beat somebody out somewhere else in their line to make their line better. Kind of the way I read into it. Both of these guys seem to fit that bill. And honestly, if we can't fix our defensive line, I would like to surgically make our offensive line better so we could just be better on offensively, especially running the ball, score more points, control more clock, help out that defense as we're trying to rebuild it. It makes sense. You look at kind of after you get out of those two, now they have this guy, Wyatt Milam from West Virginia, kind of up in there, and I've been seeing his name a lot. He seems to be kind of another one they think analysis on him is, yeah, he's moving up. He could be another one that could be a starting tackle in the NFL very early in his career, if not his rookie year. And you have a lot of developmental guys too in that list, like Connerly, Ursary, Mabau, he did make this. He's right on the edge at tackles. Seems to be a large portion of the analysis on him is he's going to be a starting guard in the NFL. So you're looking at a project switch. On this list, you see Rutledge and Booker, the top two guard types, but none of these guys that we're talking about right now are going to be round nines, but twos and threes, or maybe if they sneak and fall all the way to 4, you're going to look and go, well, maybe that's as we work our draft board. Maybe that's some of the guys we target end of day 3, beginning of day 4. I'm sorry, end of day 2, beginning of day 3, rounds 3 and 4. It's going. It gives us depth, gives us something young, and the ability maybe improve the line if we can develop him and get him in the starting roles. There's two guys that don't make the list that as I was doing this research, and the first one, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm watching Ohio State during the playoffs, and I didn't even realize Donovan Jackson, their starting left tackle, who just helped them win a national championship, was actually their starting left guard at the beginning of the season and had been their starting left guard for a couple of years. Their left tackle, and we're going to talk about him in just a second, Josh Simmons, got hurt, and they kicked him out to left tackle. And, apparently he played well enough for them to win a national championship. So, but there seems to think that he's a bona fide, definitely going to start at left guard. And you have another versatile type offensive lineman. I'm looking at him and going, James Hurst, Andrus Peat. We've had success with that in the past when most of the time we were pulling a rabbit out the hat. But you look at him and go, the existing offensive line we're running with as of right now, it would probably be Saldivari in the left guard spot with a question mark, and a guy like him challenge Saldivari, beats him out, fine. If not, you have another versatile guy on that left side that can help you out and give you depth. So if this injury bugaboo happens again this year, well, we've got a young guy. Maybe we can get him where he needs to be, and we can strengthen the depth of our line. And he would be a young guy that someday may, in a season or two, be a starter. The other one, Jake Majors, it seems to be the highest ranked center that I can find mentioned in all this. That's a position that I don't think we can. We're looking at a day 3 pick, but just trying to find somebody. The center position doesn't seem to be as highly regarded as the tackle position, basically the interior overall. But his name keeps popping up. Maybe that day 3 guy, and that might be something we look at talking about adding depth to our line, getting a guy that has played center to back up our center and develop him again in case something goes wrong. We're not trying to convert natural guards to play that position when we have a chance to develop a guy to be the logical backup and Who knows? McCoy moves on. Maybe he's ready to step up, take the job. That's the needs that I think we on these day one, day two picks got to get some help on both, especially the defensive line, especially looking at winning a job in offensive line, but at the very least, just lengthening the depth of it. And so we can try to get through a 17-game season. But you're looking best available at skill positions when you all of a sudden you're probably looking at wide receiver first, Tataroa, McMillan, and throw the names up there real quick. Just about everybody else you look on this list is very similar to the two receivers that we already have, Burton, Harris, Abuka, Bond, Golden. And what I mean by that is they're in the mold of, in some way, shape, or form, Olave or Shaheed. Not big physical receivers by any stretch of the imagination, but good wide receivers, go make plays, catch the ball. Some of them have elite speed. Some of them are explosive and fast, but they're great route runners. They're great with their hands. They're great in contested catches, despite the fact they aren't big physical receivers. They can go get the deep ball. It's a lot of the stuff when we talk about Olave and Shaheed mixed in there. But McMillan's a different animal. He is not a burner. Even his explosion, a little may not be there. We'll see. That's a pre-draft process. I think everybody's going to be looking at, see what his numbers come up there. But everything I'm reading on him is they love his route running. He has elite ball skills. He's incredible in contested catch ability, and he plays up to his size. He's a big guy. He's 6'5". Pushing, the thing they got him listed at 212, but I thought they had him listed anywhere from 215 to 220. Doesn't matter. You're talking about a guy with height and size, ability to run routes, catch the ball with people hanging on him. We badly need an addition like that. If you plan on, Olave's in his last year, Shaheed's coming off an injury. If you plan on keeping them around, he is a great compliment that you can bring in. Get him on the outside, and you got two guys that can play outside or inside, and your other two receivers. All of a sudden, you've 11 personnel set. That's going to be probably pretty good as long as you can solve your other problems in the offense. I wouldn't have a problem with him at 9. Much like Graham, I don't think he's going to be there. But again, you never know. If you looking at Olave and or Shaheed and thinking we're going to be moving on from one of them, whether it's because we don't want to pay him. Olave 1 year deal left, or we're concerned about injuries. Olave's concussion, Shaheed coming off the knee injury, whatever. Or somebody in the league somewhere looks at one of those two receivers and goes, we'd like to go. I don't think that would happen, but again, you never know. But if that offer comes and it's reasonable with the offer of what they want, going, we could do that because we can draft McMillan and then trying to find another receiver to replace him. Or you start looking at the rest of this list and you're probably going to find a replacement in there somewhere with Burden, Abuka. Those are two guys that float around in the first round. Burden at times has even gotten up into the top 10. So he may be a guy at 9. And again, if you're looking at the best available at a wide receiver spot, depending on what you want to do, you're bringing him in knowing we can't keep both of the other two guys for whatever reason. We've got a replacement fairly cheap on a rookie deal. And the list of wide receiver, when you start going down, most of the guys you see on this list, day 1, day 2 guys, depending on how everything shakes out as of right now. So you start looking, you've got some bigger receivers like Jaden Higgins from, I believe, Iowa State further down. Felton's a guy from Maryland that a lot of people like. Jack Besh, Louisiana's own, sitting in TCU. And he's a lot like Trey Havers, is kind of in between because they have some height like 6'2", 6'3", great catching ability, and do have some speed and some explosive ability to go with. So you're taking them in the second day. I don't as depth or as eventually working into the lineup. I don't think you're hurting yourself. We definitely need to add something at receiver. you're going to have some guys in there that you can find that you may not have to take that number 9 on Burton or McMillan or whoever else may jump up into that, moving up towards that top 10. But I think everybody, I don't think anybody's not looking at the Saints wide receiver corps that's currently constructed and going, that is a position of need, and they've got to go in there and bring some talent in it at it. The other one, best available, running back. I would have been all in. That's my top guy. And, I wouldn't hate it, I don't think, if he falls to 9. He might actually be there at 9, the way it's kind of sounding, that you could conceivably build a running game around. Now, how much of his ability, because he had a lot of it at Boise State, he, in my opinion, some people dinged him for the Penn State game. I thought he ran the ball well, considering that was a really good defense he was running against. And I don't know if Boise State had faced a defense like that in his 3 years there. He did put the ball on the ground a couple times, which is concerning. But overall, I'm like, I can see it. And then when I started kind of looking at him a little closer, that he doesn't. They don't think he's going to have real long speed. Like he's going to burn through and just be a sprinter bursting through there. But he does have some explosive. You can see that watching him play. It's good cut ability. It's just one of those guys for his size, because he is relatively small, about 5'9", 215. You just never seem to get a clean shot on him. He can run through some tackles, and I think that might be a little bit of his fumble problem. The whole, you're not 6'5", 300 pounds, running with the ball. These guys start hanging on you and fighting with you. It may not be worth trying to get that extra yard every single time and have a ball pop out. My guess only. Like I said, that was really in that Penn State game. I noticed that. But the thing that gives me pause on him, well, two things. His touches. This would be total rushes, rush attempts, and catches. Combined in 3 years is 830 total touches, and that is an awful lot on average. You combine that with his size, being a little smaller, what does he really project that he can do in the NFL? I don't know if you want to, with that much usage already on him, going, he's an every down back. Or how you're going to use him. And if you're going to kind of somewhat committee him, think a lot what Atlanta did with Bijan Robinson. You still need that good second back, which we have some choices there, and you can make it work. But is that where you really want to go? Is that what you really want to do? You're going to have to be 100% sure, because that could go the other way on you real quick with a few question marks there. But just natural ability, watching him run the ball is, I thought, was insane. The other thing that's kind of a reservation is, although for years people said, oh, you can get a good running back anywhere in the draft. I never fully agreed with that, but also having to draft one in the first round. Well, no, he's got to be a guy like a Jahmyr Gibbs or a Bijan Robinson that you pretty much know. But you start looking again in day 2, or even last year was a bunch of good running backs taken in the 4th round, the first round of last round of day 3. You can find them, and they're here. And there's some guys that project in first or second. Hampton, Johnson, Sampson out of Tennessee. The 2 Ohio State running backs, I do not know. They had till today to declare. I did not see what they decided to do, but either one of them is going to be in the mix if Henderson and Junkin shows up. And if the Saints wind up with any of these guys to help solidify, so Kamara, you don't know how much longer you got with him. Miller's injury problem, grab one of these guys and going, okay, we should have something to work with to establish a running game. Jordan James, Dylan Neal, and you start looking. Martinez from Miami declared. Unfortunately, I like the 2 guys from Penn State. They're both going back, trying to win a national championship next year. But this is something the Saints need to address. I think they can do it in day 2. I don't want them to be too cheap in this category where we're bringing Jamal Williams back to be the 3rd running back. I'd like some of these names that you see here. If you go a little further down, if you're looking to take another pick later in the draft, those are the guys you're going with. Roll through this one real quick. Cornerback, top guy, pretty much I think everybody's, if they don't have him one, he's close to one, is, of course, Travis Hunter. And then right behind him, you're looking at Will Johnson. Both of those are two names that obviously Travis Hunter, but Will Johnson show up in that top 10. A lot of top 10 mocks. Hunter's Hunter. If you've watched him play at all, he's just an insane athlete. Maybe the drawback on him is if you draft him wherever you're going to draft him, what do we do with him? Is he a wide receiver? Is he cornerback? Do you kind of try to, in a weird way, I'm going to use the name, although they're completely different style players, but do you kind of like Taysom Hill him? He's going to play a lot of stuff on both sides of the ball and do a lot of different things for you. Get all that. For the Saints position, what we need to do and trying to do, I think if you draft him, it's going to have to be under the pretense we're either making your receiver or we're making your cornerback. My opinion, watching him play corner is like, shit, he is really, really good there. Will Johnson, same thing. Both get a lot of high praise, a lot of high grades. And like I said, just about everybody's looking them right now as potential top 10 picks. So we talked about this in the last one. You draft a guy like that, a top corner at 9, to go with McKinstry. You figure out what you're going to do with Taylor inside. Do you try to make him take another position change if that makes your defense better? Whatever you're going to do. But you look at it there and you go with a second-year guy and a rookie, locking down those two outside spots, we can build around that in the future. So it's food for thought if it falls that way. And if they're the best guys available, I think corner's necessarily position in need compared to some of the other Saints, but you could turn it into position of strength, I think, with taking the right guy right there. I have the defensive backs combined here because I think what it sounds like, you have a couple of potential first rounders, like safety Malachi Starks from Georgia, Barron, the cornerback from Texas, Xavier Watts, safety, and Trey Amos, cornerback from Ole Miss, kind of floats around in there. As draft process, they may be able to sneak their way up into the first round, or they'll hover in the high day 2 area. And if you're looking for any help there, in the Saints case, especially safety, I think that's his position of need. I just don't think you can use 9 on Starks or Watts or any. It might be just a little high for me, but who knows? But I think definitely day 2, there's going to be a lot of guys there that in that second, that third round mix, again, you're going to get solid players that are going to help this team out, develop depth, or give them some depth and help develop that depth potentially in the starter. And hopefully, if you hit, you getting him to start as a rookie. Yeah, this is why I gave the the caveat of Buzz the draft buzz listing, because Harold Fannin, I was familiar with that name, Bowling Green, I believe. It's like kind of this big athletic guy who could be the next, that next wide receiver that kind of shows up and tight end rather shows up and takes the NFL by storm, so to speak. His athletic ability, his catching ability, he's got good size, all that stuff. I personally have watched Ty Warren be pretty good. I've watched Loveland from Michigan kind of be pretty good for them. I wasn't familiar with Helm, saw him make a couple of big plays during the college playoffs, and I'm looking at it going, I don't know if you want to go that route. I don't think you go that route at 9. Warren's probably going to be a first round pick. I don't know if you do him at 9. Loveland might make it in there, but these guys, I think a large group of them are second and third round all the way in here. All these guys would be an improvement for the Saints. Gadsden and Fannin may be a bit of a project, but I think they both kind of grade out to the point where if you want to call the big receiver, even if you can't quite call him a tight end yet because they need a lot of work there, like we were talking about McMillan, well, that might be your, in a weird sort of way, with the right offensive coordinator and the right creativity, going, well, there's our big receiver. We're going to use not as good as McMillan, obviously, but getting them in a mid-round pick somewhere and going, okay, you're going to have to go take that in 11 personnel, be that bigger receiver for it. Some of these guys on this list are more natural tight ends. Mason Taylor comes to mind. But you got a couple that you could probably get away with that if you really, really needed to. You got some guys that can really in this list. They're athletic and can go get the ball. Again, no first rounder. Um, we'd have to say the words trade down. I think if you're probably thinking of Warren or maybe even leveling or Helm if they grade out. But and Saints don't really like doing that, so I don't really foresee that happening. Real quick about linebacker right now, and Javon Walker is an interesting case where some people think he's going to be a linebacker, some people think he's going to be an edge rusher. In Georgia, he played off the ball linebacker, was pretty good run defender, but he's really good where they would move him into a pass rush situation. So I don't really know how he projects. I don't know what they're going to do with him, but he's a guy that seems to be draft him in the first round, figure out what you're going to do with him later, maybe. And I don't think the Saints need to be in that business right now. If they were a much better team, yeah, maybe. Not right now. But they've got some really good names on this list, and this is projected throughout the draft. And this is one of the things our scouting department really needs to get a lockdown on. Because if we're going to bring back Davis and Werner, and I'm pretty sure we are, obviously you're going to need depth. But I truly believe you're going to have to play some situational linebacker roles with some of these guys. Some of them are run stoppers, and a la Pete Werner, but they don't help you much else. Some guys are okay against the run, but they grade out because of the athletic ability, rushing the passer, and or their coverage skills. As crazy as it sounds, you got third down running backs in the NFL. You have third down linebackers now. Now you probably ain't going to draft any of those guys till day 3, but I don't think linebackers really on the board for the Saints. I don't know if there's the right guy there early, but I think there's some guys there where you might want to take them later. I do like a couple like Campbell. I think Barrett Corner, the Chris Paul for Ole Miss, where I think they're in that round 2-3 range and going. How much of a need it really, really is the Saints compared to some of the other areas we were looking at. But his depth and the potential replacements, I think you got to kind of consider it. Just wind it up on quarterbacks. I let this one last for a reason. I don't even know what is going to happen here. A lot of people are pretty sure with all the quarterback needy teams in front of us, 2 of them are going to take Sanders and Ward. I don't think anybody's really thinking Milroe right now is getting any higher than the second round, more than likely third or lower. It's kind of your top 3 guys that everybody keeps more or less talking about. I think this could change. This is the one really where teams start getting good looks at them throughout the draft process. This list could flip around, and what I fully expect somebody further down the list to come hurtling up because the teams start looking at him and going, "No, that's the guy we're thinking about." But I think 2 of them are getting taken at least. A lot of people saying Sanders and Warren. That could happen before we ever pick. Which is one of the reasons why when you start looking at the top guys at some of our other positions, we're looking at going, we might be able to get one. I got Milroe on there because I've said it before. I say it again. Got a couple third round picks, and if he's just sitting there, I think one of the things that the NFL and college football in general, too, if you watched the game last night, both their quarterbacks had some success on the ground when they really needed to, is the running game is becoming more and more prevalent. And it used to be you talked about, I was up until this year talking about, well, mobile quarterback, run when you need to, but you're not. But it's looking more and more like you're getting designed running type plays. And the teams that can do it and pull it off have better offensive success. And then if you can get lucky and get a guy like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen to do it for you of that level, then you're going to win a whole hell of a lot of games. Helping build that offense around it. I ain't saying for a second Milroe's anywhere near that by any stretch of the imagination. But I look at him as almost he would make the Saints roster, and anybody with an offensive coordinator that could think at all would look at him and go, if we can't make him a quarterback, we can damn sure make him a weapon on the offense that the defense has to worry about. So I got to put him there, and I'm seriously sitting there. The draft plays out, especially if we address our needs with some of the top guys with previous picks. Start getting in those third or fourth round pick, and Milroe's still sitting there. I'm going, shit, you got to take him. What I don't like about this list, this is I mentioned Simmons, the tackle that got hurt for Ohio State. He's off a lot of stuff, even though before his injury during the season, he was a top guy up there with Campbell and Banks, and now he seems to similarly be ignored. Going, you got to consider him. Another thing we talked about running backs, probably somebody's already dinged me for this when we checked the comments about Cam Scatterbo not making, and that is shocking me because I think there's a lot of the fan base and the media types are going, did you see what that guy does? But yet the analyst guys are worried about, well, he only runs like a 4.5 or a 4.6 40 or whatever they're coming up with. Going, really? It looks like the dude can play football though. So guys like that coming off an injury or just haven't addressed that. And I think they show up and show the league, hey, we're healthy and ready to go. Or in Scatterbo's, case, shows up and goes, look, I can play the game of football. You really want me on your team if you can get me. They're going to be just so when we do this in a couple of weeks after that process, I think some names like that, and there's others that are going to kind of pop in there a little more. And some of them, I think, again, that second and third, I see those as some very critical picks for the Saints. Really good football players sitting there that, as long as we don't do anything stupid like start trading away that mid-round capital, I think we could make some sneaky good picks in there. The other thing, real quick, update on the coaching search. And if y'all want to give me like 2 seconds to check the Twitter machine real quick and make sure we've got no updates coming. And of course, it's taking forever to come up. Okay. Not really a whole lot different than I can see right now. Other than what we kind of know, and I'm sure y'all know, but just Ben Johnson, Bears grabbed him. I think everybody kind of thought that was going to happen. And he was never in play for the Saints one way or the other, which brings us to the Jets. And that's why I was checking to see if any of our beat writers had anything on this rumor that Aaron Glenn and for head coach and Lance Newmark, for general manager, he's an assistant with the Commanders front office. The Jets are trying to bring them both in, lock them down, and not let him leave the building without a contract. So we're playing second fiddle, waiting to see what happens with that before we can even get Glenn in for the second interview. Seemed a lot of people put their hopes in that was going to be it. That's the guy. I like Glenn a lot, and this is the reason why, because even Northern was trying to give me crap. Well, they lost the game, whatever. Right now, what's looking left on the table for the Saints? All of a sudden, Mike McCarthy it sounds like he's getting a in-person interview. You got Kafka and Weaver who were coming back, but with the weather right now, that's gotten delayed and pushed back. And I don't know how serious we are about either one of them. I don't know if you really want either one of them to come in as a head coach. There's no real buzz going on with Brady and Moore right now, possibly more to do with the fact they're both still in the playoffs, which brings up Kingsbury, who just said, I'm out until the Commanders get eliminated. You really don't have much buzz sitting there. Darren Rizzi sounded like all but a done deal going to Chicago and being Ben Johnson's special team coordinator. It almost feels like we've stagnated out a little bit. Unless Glenn walks out of the Jets without a contract that he doesn't take the job. And guess we come back and play New Orleans. And I'm very interested to see what New Orleans would do at that point. They would go the all out, don't let him leave the building approach. Because we really haven't added any new names. And every now and then you see a new name pop up with another team, this guy, that guy, or is in the process or whatever. It really seems like Glenn pulls it seems like that people are expecting that Glenn and Newmark are going to be the new head coach and GM for the Jets. McCarthy, Kafka, Weaver, maybe Rizzi is a dark horse where we just go, screw it. We'll just bring him back. Let him take over. And I don't know. Of those names left, like McCarthy's the lightning rod. He's like right now the Derek Carr of head coaching candidates for the Saints. Either I read people like, no, he's the best guy for the job. Got to bring him in, list their reasons. And then people, no, I don't want any part of them, list their reasons. There seems to be no middle ground. And literally, I see no real buzz about Kafka and Weaver and Brady Moore. Everybody's like on a wish list, but how real is the wish? I don't even know. I don't know if anybody can really get a feel, and may not be able to get it until they get bounced from the playoffs or after the Super Bowl's over if they make it that far. So I feel like we're just stuck in neutral right now on the whole coaching thing. And to me, it would be a surprise if all of a sudden, like, as I still have Twitter up, all of a sudden, bam, it starts dropping. Oh, we got so-and-so is going to be this new Saints head coach or whatever. So probably this time next week, we'll revisit it and see where they're standing, who's taking jobs and who we're bringing back for second interviews. Northern, too bad I don't live closer. Pineapple and coconut pancakes. Man, that actually sounds really awesome because I love pineapple, coconut, and pancakes. I've never tried them all together, but yeah, no. And right now I'm last I saw, I think we're up to like 4 or 5 inches of snow around here, which I really feel like people around the country are just going, really? Y'all are snowed in with that? I'm not sure, but to us, that's like catastrophic because infrastructure, everything is just not built for this type of thing to happen because anything over like an inch of snow happens about once every 100 years around here. And that's where we are right now. I don't talk about the Lions. I'd like to talk about the Saints more if they'd ever turn their shit around and become as good as the Lions, and we could. But right now, there's a reason why and it just ain't here. That talk comes around with those. It's amazing how when you're a better team, people talk about you more, especially when you're not a very good team and you're trying to fix your team and looking for somebody to model it after. Way back in the day, we were saying the same things about the Patriots. Do I think Glenn saw? I have no clue. I mean, that report last week, I kind of poo-pooed it because I feel looking in at it from the outside, I think it would be the right move for Aaron Glenn personally, as opposed to us. It listed those reasons in the last video, but I didn't feel that strongly about it. And then this developed on top of that he's going there first, which is always a bad sign because you can get this scenario where they're just not going to let him leave the building without a contract. It's going to escalate. But I was like, whatever. But then this whole thing about them looking at a GM and bringing them in together and having them, because as what I understand, they're both in the building today. So it's almost like, let's have a big sit down and see if we can all get along and start signing some contracts. So if that's the case, and that's who the Jets really want, they've got them both in the building. And I would think odds are pretty good that it could happen, but I also kind of expected to have seen something by now about it and haven't. So a lot of mystery with the whole Jets head coaching Aaron Glenn thing. Talking to Streets Rizzi going to Chi-Town. Yeah, that had been out for a while that he was interviewing for the special teams job there. And I say a while, I think it was more or less confirmed yesterday that Ben Johnson was trying to assemble an all-star. This is what I read yesterday, all-star staff. And Rizzi was high on his list of bringing in for special teams. Yeah. Well, this is if we only did have the crystal ball in the picture. Yeah, sometimes I feel like that's what a lot of NFL teams do. Like, if you notice, like they've got in the background of the thumbnail all these video stuff showing and charts and graphs and all, and they're ignoring all that and just looking in the crystal ball. But um, yeah, it's hardly an exact science when you're trying to draft, and some positions are really harder than others. Very important. The Saints get number 9 and number 40 right this year. They have to. They can't keep screwing around like they had the last couple of years with those high draft picks. Yeah, that's what I thought. Like first thing this morning, like what I read this morning made it seem like he slept in the lobby last night waiting for them to come open the building up. So I, I was really at some point expecting looking at him going, yay, he's signing, or no, he's on his way to New Orleans, which obviously isn't going to be for another couple of days. So I don't know. I don't even know if he's still in the building. I just wish somebody would tell me that, because if he is, that would be a sign. Well, yeah, they probably are working something out. Show's going to be a Grateful Dead concert. I've never been to a Grateful Dead concert, so I really can't answer that one. DA feels like we have so many holes. Yeah, DA. I mean, yeah, that's that. It, and the more it's kind of weird because the more mocks I look at, and I think really most of the adjustments people were making in mocks was largely based on the team still playing in college and the players available. It feels like Golden would be a great example. Like he shot up all kind of places just because for Texas, the wide receiver, Bond was, their top guy was hurt most of the year. Golden starts going off, has an insane playoff, and everybody's turning looking at him. Not saying that he won't be. It's just that fast. Bond I get hurt. The other guy steps up, starts throwing up numbers, and we've kind of swapped spots. So you look at those and but not like huge shifts. But one of the things about not having huge shifts, I wasn't kidding. When I'm looking at like mock drafts with the Saints, we seem to be all over the place on, you right, a lot of defensive linemen, but nobody making up their mind which ones. It's like, you know, skirting, saw Michael Williams, saw one, the other defensive tackle from Michigan, Grant, going, maybe wouldn't mind having him. He's one of the top guys, but kind of let's trade back. If that's so, yeah, it kind of all over the place. And I think that's because a lot of people are looking at the Saints going, we don't know who they're trying to drop mock draft. We don't know who the coach is going to be. We don't know what schemes they're going to run. We're not sure who's going to be back on their roster, so they know exactly which holes they need to fill in which order. So it's kind of like a mixed grab bag. So when I was kind of putting this together, it was a little bit of a wish list, trying to find that at number 9, and this is impossible. Let's go back to the crystal ball conversation, but the bulletproof pick at 9, probably the closest thing is the really big defensive tackle from Michigan. But he starts standing up at the line of scrimmage and letting NFL offensive linemen who, they have tricks, but get under his pads and start shoving them around and he can't get off blocks. He's going to start looking like a bunch of our other defensive tackles. And then we're all going to be going, Jesus Christ, there's another Peyton Turner or another Foskey or whatever. So it ain't easy. Bite the bull and start fresh. I'd really want to see how there's so many different ways they could play this. They really, really do. And I think to go back and give you credit that you've been about the whole, well, you got to get the head coach figured out. You got to, that's the point we're at now, because now you kind of, we know what the roster is, those quote 61 players. We know what the money is finally, or more or less. But I don't think it's exact, but everybody's got to cut that honed in. We know who's declared for the draft, just waiting on the Ohio State Notre Dame guys. And I'm assuming they've done it at some point today. I know there's a deadline this afternoon. So now we have all the information, then let's start figuring it out. So that's going to be part of it. And I don't know the mind of Mickey, what he's looking at head coach. God knows I don't want to go there, jump in his head and try to figure it out myself at times, but that's gonna drive a lot of the bus on this. Middle linebacker DT. Like I said, middle linebackers or off the ball linebackers, expect somebody that can play in some space and cover and bring it's a little higher level athletic ability. So even if it's kind of the other linebacker, I don't have a problem with it. Just not sure about 9. Could be Walker, you know, guy from Georgia. And like I said, they seems to be a mixed bag on how they're looking at him. Is he an off the ball linebacker, or is he a pure edge guy, or some combination of both? They need to address linebacker now in the pre-draft process. Like a lot of these guys, like Campbell and Paul, some guys I really like, could get themselves flying up the draft board and start flying up in the first round. So I think the measurables everybody knows what the tape looks like for the last 3-4 years on these guys, right? They kind of think they know everything else, but get them in the combines, they get them in the pro days, they get them at the Senior Bowl, all that stuff, and then they really start nailing down their projections. And the better teams get it right. And if they need a middle linebacker, they go find one, even if there isn't one in the like that obvious choice in the first round. To your point, but maybe in the second round, or if you pick an early in the third, or if you have 2/3 and you want to jump in the end of the second round, maybe to grab one of those guys, and you're curing another depth problem and potential issue. If not 2025, definitely by 2026. Oh yeah, my hair days get bad the second the temperature gets under like 65 degrees. So yeah, bit of bad hair day all day. I'm not even trying to fight it. Don't even care. It's just pointless. It'd be it's the equivalent of me wishing it would stop snowing right now, because that ain't gonna happen for a couple hours either. Ah, yeah. Especially those of us that aren't used to being in the middle of snowstorms where it wouldn't affect your hair. So yeah, well, we get the teen degrees tomorrow. We're waiting for the snow to end first and get even colder over the middle of the night. So I don't know if we're gonna join quite the severity of which y'all normally get up there, but we're getting like our once in 100-year taste of it, and I am done with it. I will never complain about a heat wave again down here in the South. Oh, Abdul Carter. Oh, he went to private high school. Wow. Um, he I'm impressed with Carter. I understand the aspect of, you know, being raw and maybe and it's kind of the things when you read in that, well, he gets caught looking on the inside too much, and that kind of thing. And I'm like, some of that stuff can be fixed, but at the very least, if you as a defensive core there I just keep going back to this, where there's defenses around the NFL that guys who play an awful lot and are quote unquote starters have the same problem. They give up the edge to a defensive coordinator. Just get to the point. We don't care. I'll have the schemed up where somebody behind you is going to cover that outside run. Get in there and be disruptive. If they're throwing the ball, go sack the quarterback. If they're handing it off, go find the ball carrier and tackle him, or try to rip it out of his hands, or whatever you're going to do. You look around the NFL. There's a lot. Somebody brought this up to me. Goes, how many times have you watched T.J. Watt contain the run on the edge for Steelers? And I'm like, I'm sure he does, but I couldn't say that. Yeah, I've seen him do that a lot. But what I have seen him do is just terrorize quarterbacks and run down ball carriers from behind when they were trying to run and like, man. And I don't know if Carter is that ilk, but that's what they kind of in the talk about him being is like a guy like that. Going, shit, get him on my team. Give me a good defense coordinator that can figure it out. We'll make it work. To the point, you brought this up a lot during the season about the fact defensive line, not a lot of sacks. And it's an embarrassing number when our defensive line is 20 pressures short of that really good duo that Houston has that helped them make the playoffs. But, they had 20 more pressures, but they had 22 to 4.5 total sacks between the two of them. That's an issue. Guy like this going, nah, no, I think he's going to get guys on the ground and make some big plays for you. And our defense really needs to address that more. Yeah, I don't even want to think about tonight, how low it's going to be. Nope, nope, nope. We're just down here in the bayou. We're not made for the cold. That's for sure. Whatever. I mean, I just want it to be over. I want warmth again. The great Northland. Yeah, I knew you were up there somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but I knew you were dealing with the um the extreme blizzards. That's why I'm hesitant to complain about our 5 or 6 inches of snow or seven, whatever we're gonna wind up with. Feeling like y'all deal with those numbers, but in feet, you know. So I'm like, but God, ugh, had it. Yeah. Well, I'm talking a lot right now. Try to keep warm. And my coffee's getting cold. All right, where we're at. Oh, thank you very much, Beck, for the nice compliment. Um, Research and all, you can just find stuff and try to find stuff that corroborates stuff I find, which you'd be amazed how come I can look at like doing this, look at the same guy and get five different opinions of him. But again, in all fairness, when you're looking at the draft, to be expected because we're we're kind of in the middle of the process. We're not towards the end as the draft approaches, where you a lot of that stuff gets zeroed in better. Utah still sounds cold. I don't think I could do Utah Northern Saint. I'm thinking like the Caribbean somewhere is where I'm thinking about moving because I'm pretty sure they don't get snow. Jack Hunter. I like Jack. Trade down out of 9 to 15 and 18 and pick up a second. I love the thought of trying to do something like that. Or we've seen some teams in the past like trade down a couple of times and really, really stockpile either mid round picks. Because I think this is like largely, I hate to say it because it sounds disparaging, but I don't mean it this way. It's a solid like mid round draft. He got a lot of guys. It feels a lot like I think it was in 22. Um, when you didn't have a high quarterback class, you had a lot of receivers, you had some edge. You just had a bunch of guys that you're looking at and going, we know they can play somewhat in the NFL. We don't know how good they're going to be, but odds are they're not going to suck. And a lot of those guys floated around for a few years and still are in the mid level. So I feel like this is the draft, and I feel like, well, that might be your answer. I can't get one guy that's elite, but I can trade down and get two or three very good players that are going to fill some holes and help me out. And if I can develop them, I might get them up to a higher level. But if not, I've got a depth problem figure out. I can or plug some holes. As DA said earlier, it's just holes all over. Plug some of these holes. So I don't have to worry about it for a couple of years. There, it's at least a competitive position. So I can build somewhere else and be. If I can't make the linebackers, so to speak, upgrade them, but I can do the defensive line and some of my defensive backs. I can just kind of fill in with those linebackers until I do get that top guy that you can bring in. Um, I don't mind taking the offensive tackle, tight end. There's some like said earlier when we're talking about the tight ends. Warren and Loveland kind of top guys. Kid from Texas is going to float in there, but the projects. Hate to use the air quotes here, but some of those supposed projects. But I look at our need for bigger receiver and go, like a Fannin. Look, if he can just go run some routes out there out of on the outside occasionally, almost like we used to. I hate using this name because I don't know if they'd ever be this, but it's almost like the Jimmy Graham effect. Like you look at some of those guys that they're looking at and going, got size, got some athletic ability, got good hands. I'm not saying they could be a Jimmy Graham, but I think that's kind of how we discovered Jimmy Graham when we were looking at him and going. So I'm hesitant to say that, but at the same time, I'm trying to make a point here going, you got some mid-round picks. You trade down, you draft some solid guys. You wind up with an extra fourth. Fannin and Gadsden's floating around right there. Going, what do you have to lose at that point? And you may flip into that point where you're solidifying an obvious area of need because you need more playmakers on the field in which you Johnson was supposed to be that guy, and he was what he was. And Northern's going to bang on me because he thinks I'm in love with Juwan Johnson. But I liked him as a solid NFL tight end, just like I like Moreau, the same thing. And at times they were our best offensive weapons, and we used them really, really well. But it'd been nice to have one of those guys to really, really hurt consistently downfield. So, yes, Northern, I'm giving you props. But I still contend our two receivers don't suck like you thought they were. But I'd like to get some tight ends, but I'd like to get at least one of them better, if not two. I'd have to go roster by roster, name by name down the roster. I think there's a few plus 30s I wouldn't mind. I could live with Davis for one more year just because I feel like there's other needs we need to move on from that are more desperate. We can't do them all at one time. And he leaves because I don't know if Jordan's coming back. So you're some leadership stuff, that you talk about that. But the biggest thing about DeMario is it's sort of like if you watch Washington play and they're playing again, if you watch Bobby Wagner and you think about, I think DeMario's in this category, they're still really good compared to a lot of other linebackers in the league when you watch them play. And Wagner was Seattle, then the Rams. He's kind of knocked around a little bit. Washington gets him. So I don't think since he's moved around teams the last few years, when you change teams, and so you were an elite linebacker, and then you change teams, and because you're getting older, now you're just very good. Then you change teams again, and now you're really good. So it's not a huge drop off, but if you stayed with the same team throughout that, and they're looking over a 17-year career, and they're going, well, he used to be up here, now he's down here, but down here is still on. It's kind of how I feel about DeMario, but he needs some help. I think that's the biggest thing I have against him. And I don't mean against him. I mean, looking at him going, his play has stepped down a little bit. And he used to be the guy that covered other people's mistakes. And now they're still making mistakes. So I would like to move on from some of those guys and let him just be that good, solid linebacker. But if you find the guy that is going to replace him, by the same token, it's still a business, and you'd still have to make that move. I think it would hurt. I'd probably cry a little bit, but I get the point. I just like as far as drafting, I don't know if there's any of them in this draft. Yeah, they're gonna have to work to fix the roster problem, Jack. It's just I guess that's kind of adding more picks because traditionally the Saints don't trade down, right? And even if you don't add more picks in this draft, if you happen to make some trades where you pick up some early round picks next year and you're really, going, 2025 is going to be tough, but we're going to stack up as many picks in 2026, clear the cap, sign some free agencies at the beginning of 2026 and have a hell of a draft class and go from there. I get it. So that trade around, however you need it to work it out, you need to put yourself in a position where you can add talent in the draft. You have to add talent in the draft. We did not done a good job of that since in a while. Not enough. We've had some good picks here and there, but not the solid draft we've been needing. That's the real question. Your next one is, will they do it? And they need to, but that's not Mickey style. He would rather package Pickett and move up for that one guy. And if there is a one guy in this draft, the defensive, Graham or Carter or whatever, but what are you getting up to get him compared to when you're looking at, you could add some interior defensive linemen a little later on. They may not be as good as him, but you get one of him in one of those. Maybe you don't get a defensive edge as good as Carter, but you get one of those other guys. So you didn't get a 10 at either position, but you got 2 8s. So overall, if you develop them and run the scheme and do everything the coach's staff's supposed to do and add some good players around them, you can still get it to work out in your favor. in what you're talking about trading around and trying to add picks, I think you could kind of do this in this draft just because as of right now, I don't know if anybody's really locked into those top spots going, yeah, he is an elite must have um, outside of the top 4 or 5, maybe right now. Oh, just add that one. Oh, there's a double ad. Uh, yeah, it's and look, if he wants to retire, that's another thing. But as far as us retiring him, but yeah, under the right circumstances, I think he's one of the few players of that era there's a scenario where it's probably better to move on from him, depending on what we replace him with or what we're trying to do, or there's other people we have to do that with first. That's more important. So, yeah, I don't see him being here though either way past 2025. I really, really don't. Yeah, nobody's seen Jack. The sad quarterback class. It just got that and again, I there was no quarterback love hype for the Heisman Trophy, which is normally my indicator of how good the quarterback class is going to be. Really wasn't a whole lot of that, and I really massively haven't cared about the Heisman since Peyton Manning didn't win it that year. But I kind of pay attention when some LSU guys are there, so not very often. But I thought there was only one quarterback. It was a guy from Oregon, right? That was there in the finalists. And that doesn't happen very often, but that tells you a lot. And speaking of which, did he declare or is he going back to Oregon? I just popped in my head. I don't even know. Yeah, definitely his best days are over. But again, some of his not as good days are still better than a lot of guys who are making a lot of money and starting in the league's best days. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Um, guards, two we covered the Booker and I'm gonna tell you the guy I like at guard is the guy that's been playing left tackle for Ohio State down the stretch and then through the playoffs and win a national championship. Who was a guard his whole career up until Simmons got hurt. So a few more like that. But I think most of the again when the draft process plays out, we'll know for sure. But the guys who are currently playing guard are likely to get drafted behind some of the tackles. It's two, Mumba, and I can't remember the other one, but they're both offensive. Everybody's saying, oh, they're going to play guard. Somebody's going to draft them in front of the actual guard players like Booker and in Rutledge for Georgia. They're just going to move them from tackle and playing them at guard. So, and look, that may have to be our draft philosophy in this year, knowing 05 is going to be a wash. Man, go ahead and draft the tackle that you're going to move to guard. Give him a whole year to figure out guard and make him into the guard that everybody's projecting at. A lot like some people suggested should have been done with Trevor Penning from the jump, even when before we drafted him, going, they had him playing left tackle and all this other, but he looks like a guard. Probably be a better guard. Who knows? Yeah. So the quarterbacks are going to move up for two reasons. The biggest one is some teams are just going to talk themselves into reaching for a quarterback at some point. It happens almost nearly every year. And then the year Kenny Pickett was taken in the first round with Malik Willis and Sam Howell, and I forget who else was in that draft class. Honestly, none of them should have been even considered in the first round, and it's probably marginal in the second round. But you start getting into the third round with those guys going, look, we know they can do some things. We know they can't do other things. We think we can develop them. Go from there. But don't do what Pittsburgh did, burn a first round draft pick into a guy that it'd be almost like you just getting kind of, and I know he was a hometown boy and all that other stuff, and that played into it, I guess, but it shouldn't, you know. It if there's not a first round quarterback there, even though you need an elite quarterback added to your roster, don't do it. And I think this feels like one of those drafts that none of them should really be considered before the second and possibly the third. but we'll see. Second thing is they'll get out. You'll have somebody that's just going to blow up at the combine or throw up huge numbers or their pro day or whatever, and that may be actually a part of some NFL teams talking themselves into taking them in the first round. But inevitably, that almost always happens too. Patriots fan and don't. Oh, how's it going, Patriots fan? I don't want to take a tackle at 4. Travis and Carter are going. I see New Orleans move up to 4 and take Sanders. I hope not. Um, that would trade up, given draft capital, take Sanders. Nah. Um, nah, can't see that happening. Would not be a good move. We're not a good enough team to waste draft capital to, as we were just talking about, take a guy that's probably going to be marginal. Not a good move. You'd have to know 100% for sure Sanders is Jaden Daniels or Bo Nix or one of those guys that just came. And I don't think I haven't seen anybody even remotely suggest that. Do not insult me calling me Mel Kiper. But although I would like to make Mel Kiper's money from all kind of people just paying me to talk nice about their guys, to try to get them drafted higher, because I'm pretty sure that's Mel's game nowadays. My opinion only. No, just, but it seems an awful lot like. I don't always agree with you. I don't necessarily always disagree with you. It's the middle ground where we argue, Northern. Get pick 9, Ranch, and second round pick for our 4th overall. Well, if you want to give us a pick for Ryan Ramczyk, you can have him. And you do know that he's retiring because his knees are shot and just totally gone. But so I would happily trade Ramczyk and to anybody that may want him. But no. But yeah, Ramczyk for the 4th overall all day long. But no, I'm not moving. I'm not moving from 9. I moved back from 9, not forward. Yeah, well, ultimately, the roster purge. It's how you want to do it, when you want to do it, how much of the piper you want to pay. It's all that whole conversation. But yeah, Davis, Cam, Carr, Kamara is probably going to take care of himself in the near future because I think I'm going to say it's only like $2 million guaranteed on this one, so he's pretty much here this year. But I don't think there's anything really after that on it. So unless they would restructure him or extend him, I think 2025 is really the last year Kamara has on our books. But Honey Badger, McCoy, I would not give up on yet. Olave, I would not give up on yet. Shaheed, depends how he comes back. The rest of the you got me lost here. And no, you don't purge a long snapper that you're basically paying long snapper money to, that because then you have to bring another long snapper you're going to give the exact contract to. Yeah, I'm not really sure where you're going with that, Northern, but yeah, I would agree that eventually within the next 2 years, Davis, Cam, Carr, Kamara, one way, and Honey Badger, one way or the other, are all going to be going. You got guaranteed money sitting on, or do you have guaranteed money on McCoy? But I know you're pretty much into him for another year, and I'm not looking to move him. The only way I'd move McCoy is if somebody wowed me with a trade offer for him. Olave, you only have 1 year left on his deal, and it's all guaranteed. So he's going to play this year. You figured out from that after that. And Shaheed, you just wait on the knee injury. Comp pick. I thought I saw that today. We got a 7th for Isaac Yiadom. I don't know what else. And if that was the final list, I have no clue. But just saw, in fact, Twitter, somebody posted that up. Yeah, we got a 7th for Frisco signing Isaac Yiadom last year. I would too, but I mean, if a hole's a hole, and especially if it's a deep hole, the more you draft there to fill it. But some people just of the philosophy. You got a bunch of holes, you throw a little dirt in all of them. But no, I'm like, look, like on the if you decide we're going to rebuild our defensive line and you take 8 picks out of the 8 picks and you know, first, second, third, fourth, you're walking out of there with, one of the premier edge and interior players and then three of the combination of the other three. I ain't gonna bitch. I think the flip side, some people would argue, yeah, well, what if you miss them all? Where does that leave you? And I'm like, well, if you miss the point we're at, if we miss draft picks this year badly, it doesn't matter who you used them on. You missed draft picks are really gonna hurt this year more than ever. It's because you just don't have enough on the roster to compensate it for it. Um, about 3 more sips, and it's about an hour 20 in. So yeah, I'll probably be wrapping this up fairly soon. Um, don't eat Tootsie Rolls, so I don't know. Not since I was a kid. And the only thing I remember about Tootsie Rolls is the chocolate. Excuse me a sec. Which chocolate's one of my favorite flavors of anything. Uh, are the cats freaking out with the snow? No, Sweetie Pie, being the smarter of the two, is just curled up on her blanket on my sofa and pretty much hasn't moved all day, other than to go eat a little while ago, and then she went right back. Fergus, yeah, every now and then he goes to the window and stares longingly at all the white stuff. But I know if I'd open the door and try to put him out, he would lose his mind quickly. So yeah, he's kind of freaked. Oh, Keep Spence, Hayball, Smith, Penning, Flogger. Yeah. And Penning's going to be an interesting one because I think he's only got a year left. So he probably gets almost like this is a prove it year for him, I would think. And they would extend him at some point for reasonable money, depending on what he does, or they're going to let him walk. But I think everybody else, only thing it's Smith right now until I see him kick actual game time. I don't know because I know you don't like Groupie, but go look at Groupie's year. He was a lot better than he was the previous year. And you run the risk because remember, everybody was upset. We let Lutz go to save money and brought in Groupie and he struggled. So you could have the same thing. I would have preferred Darren Rizzi to use that exemption on Smith on the 53 man and bring him up and let him kick in a couple of those meaningless games we were playing at the end of the year. But no, they didn't want to do it. And then I would say, okay, let me, because if he walks out there, he gets 4 chances, he flubs all 4 of them. You know, you're not having his name on this list. We just don't know. So I would give a possible. We'll see. Groupie could return to his form of last year. And, this was we don't know. But either way, in the sense of bringing Smith back, kind of a good move because you feel like, dear God, unless they both just suck, you got a young kicker with money. If Smith can take the job, or if you stick with Groupie, as long as Groupie did what he did last year. Yep. Believe that one winds us up for the day, which is good because we're almost at an hour 30. Appreciate everybody joining and helping my day of winter wonder hell just go a little faster. Hopefully in the next couple hours it'll quit snowing. Then it's just going to get colder, but oh well. But I do think that as premature as this is, I think everybody, because I'd have been flying blind. Like I said, I knew a little bit about what was going on with the rookies, but not enough. And this is not a deep dive by any stretch, but a shallow to mid diving board into the pool of checking rookies and kind of finding some stuff and some interesting stuff. Seeing some guys I never like. Who's this? Like Fannin, the tight end that BuzzDraft had all the way at the top of their list. But this will acclimate itself. And this is kind of like one of those deals throwing names out when the Senior Bowl starts. Rolling in the combine, just kind of going, okay. Because a lot of times I don't pay attention hard on that stuff, but I feel like this year I am because, as been pointed out a number of times, we have so many holes. We need to roll over this roster. We need to really start working on the rebuild. And At 9, we have a chance of finding that top end player we can build something around. But there's a lot of depth at certain positions that would help us that is spread throughout this draft. Find out who they are and go get them. And hopefully Jeff Ireland and the group up in the front office are doing the exact same thing, and they will go get them. Start that process over. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. We can have this done by 2026. That we'll power through 2025 the best we can. 2026, we'll take that step back and go, okay, we have a shot. This draft is going to have to work out to get us on that path. Otherwise, you start blowing picks, we're going to waste another year. Yeah. Pretty soon. Hang on. And I can't do a deep dive, but I can check the Twitter guys and no, seems like most of them are posting pictures of snow. So yeah, no coaching update, Northern. So that about winds it up. The other thing is, I think really we're to the point now where, as Northern just asking a coaching update, I think that's where we are, waiting to see who the coaches. Waiting to see who we're going to hire, waiting to see what the staff is going to look like. And I think a large part of it is who's going to help continue to rebuild the offense. I think we can all agree if we got bright spots, more of them are on offense than they are on defense. And then who's going to shoulder the mantle of rebuilding that Saints defense and bringing it back to the level we all expect. So with that, I will say thank y'all for participating, especially those of y'all down here and up there with Northern and everywhere in between that eventually right now sounds like you're dealing with bitter cold and snow. Hopefully some of you, a couple of y'all maybe are in Tahiti right now having daiquiris and thinking about us. You know, that would be awesome too if I was there, but here we are. We'll just kind of keep rolling. Should be back Sunday night for sure. May get, if I get a chance, get something dropping in the middle of the week, but I think we're really, what you're going to hear from me is probably kind of waiting for the coach in this decision to see how that plays out. And I'm assuming everybody right now is probably waiting to see what the Jets do. Do they get Glenn and their GM done today? And then much like Ben Johnson and the Bears, you add that one in the consecutive day. And I think you'll start seeing some of the other dominoes fall. And if we have anybody else we're waiting to give second interviews, a Moore or a Brady or something, you'll be able to figure that out too as they kind of start to fall, where we sit in the mass of the whole thing. So I think that's an important concept in the coach of going, as scary as it sounds, we of the top guys we're trying to get, we may not be anybody's first choice. So we may have to sit and wait a while to see how it shakes out. Hope it ain't true, but I'm starting to get a little scared that it may be. So thank you for joining me today. Please go ahead, give me a thumbs up, like, share, subscribe. Got any more? Throw them down in the comments. Like I said, update on the coaching stuff, and then we'll be here Sunday night to talk about whatever the key topic is. But just between now and then, I'm not even really sure what it is, but I'm sure something's going to come up. So we'll discuss it then. But until I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.